Firstly, it's my massive pleasure to be able to welcome everybody here to the first LILA Trailblazer event of our 2023-2024 LILA Trailblazers program. It is really exciting to have you all here. So firstly, what is LILA? So LILA is the London Irish Lawyers Association. It's full of people who are connected to back home from all across wherever we call home. And there's a real diversity across that. And we all also work in the London legal sector, and there's a real diversity across that, doing lots of different things. And hopefully that's going to be represented by this panel. We've all taken different routes, all from different parts, and all work in different areas. And what is the Trailblazer program? The Trailblazer program is this really exciting opportunity for us to basically combine all of the passion and expertise and knowledge within the London Irish community and connect that up through our participating schools and our participating universities to trailblazing talent that's hidden away in all the different schools back home and the different universities amongst the university volunteers. And what we want to do is we want to give you the insight of basically our pathways, how we did it, and try and provide you with that knowledge. And we want to try and give you the skills that you'll need and help give you those skills, help work on those skills that you'll need to take those pathways through our different workshops and our different events. And we also want to provide you with a platform to demonstrate just how class you are already and to learn a huge amount through that as well, through our different competitions. So this is the first talk, but we've got a huge amount of other things in store. Your universities and your schools will have the schedule, talk to them about it, but that includes a talk on Wednesday the 27th of September, which is all about routes into law specifically. And again, it's an amazing panel, so please look out for that. We've also got another talk in November, and that's with London Irish lawyers who have used their jobs to fight injustice and use the law. And that's a really brilliant panel too, so please look out for that one in November. But before that, we've got loads of other things. We've got amazing workshops where they're all focused on specific areas of law, and we're going to assign you to areas of law that you're fascinated in, that you're interested in, and you're basically put in the shoes of a lawyer. It's really interactive, and you're guided through that by some of the best lawyers in those areas. So again, talk to your main points of contact about that as well, about how to sign up to it, because it'll be really cool. And then we've also got brilliant competitions. We've got a mock trial competition, and we've also got a solicitor competition. So huge amount of things in store for the rest of this year. We would love you to sign up, and this is just the first talk, but I'm already massively over talking. So my name, very quickly, is Michael Walker. I'm a committee member on the LILA committee. I'm a Kells kid, Balmain boy, and I'm also a commercial litigator over here in London at Kingsley Galway. But far more importantly, let me introduce you to your amazing panel. So firstly, we've got Anna. Anna is from Shrule in County Mayo. She studied law at the University of Galway and has been in London working as a solicitor at the same firm as me, Kingsley Galway, and has been repping it up there. She works on a wide range of really interesting stuff, which takes her from representing the wealthiest family in the UK in highly publicised, really interesting, fascinating pieces of litigation, to also represent some of the most vulnerable people in the UK who don't have capacity to give instructions through the court of protection. So really very fascinating career that Anna has, and it's brilliant to have her on. We've also got Connell. Connell's from the city of Derry, and he's been living in London for the last 5 years. And he's currently senior commercial lawyer at TikTok, which is very, very cool. And his interesting fact is also class. It's part of a skydiving club. And I'm going to quickly double back on Anna's interesting fact, because it was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever read in the email. And it's so she came across a promotion one day where you get a free bungee jump if you buy a phone. So I bought a phone and jumped off a crane a few minutes later. So that was the greatest email I've received in all my time being in a law firm since I was 21. So thank you very much, Anna. So then moving on to Lily, another amazing lawyer from Limerick. She studied law at Trinity. She's currently a commercial litigation lawyer at the private client department in Michigan de Rea. Michigan de Rea's private client department has done some of the most high-profile pieces of litigation, and specifically that team over the last donkey's years, and has been working on amazing things as part of that. One of the very, very cool things she did as part of her career was successfully challenging a Red Notice from Interpol. If anyone's seen Red Notice, it's a brilliant movie. It's probably slightly different from what Lily was doing that day, but do check it out on Netflix. But it's also very, very cool. And her interesting fact is she's also a qualified yoga teacher. So all very cool things. And then finally, we've got Emma. So Emma is from Belfast. She is she studied law as an undergraduate in Dublin, then studied abroad in the United States, and then got a master's at Cambridge. She loves studying and is very good at it, clearly. She is a barrister, a commercial chancery barrister at Full Four Stone Buildings. She'll be telling you all about what that is and what that's about. One of the coolest things she's done as part of her career, she's worked in Bermuda on a scholarship, which again is pretty cool. And her interesting fact, she worked as a ski lift operator in New Zealand, which sounds not overly complicated, but I imagine it's something you don't want to get wrong. So that's amazing. So this is a brilliant panel. I'm so excited just to get stuck in immediately with them all. So we want to be really receptive throughout this. Any questions you have, so please use the Q&A box. Just as we go, if there's anything that you think of or you've been ruminating on or it pops into your head as we go, please just pop it in there and we'll try and address it either pretty soon after you put it in or at the very least at the end. So no need to wait until the very end to send through your questions. But the first one that I wanted to start off with is pretty introductory, but it's basically to find out from each of our panelists, when and why did you decide you wanted to become a lawyer? So I think we'll start with Emma, if that's all right, about basically, yeah, when and why did you decide to become a lawyer?
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much, Michael. I am one of those odd people who wanted to be a lawyer from a pretty young age. So pretty much from early secondary school, when I worked out what a lawyer was. And I worked out that it's not quite Americanized television, but actually split profession. And that in Ireland and the UK, they've got barristers and solicitors. And from pretty early on, I realized I wanted to be a barrister because I like the idea of arguing, of advocating for a position. And I spent a good deal of school and university doing that through different moot courts, mock trials, things like that, to really test the waters. And then I studied law and didn't hate it, actually quite liked it. And so here I am. And I qualified as a barrister now 7 years ago, so I'm still enjoying it.
Nice, amazing. And so when you're talking about the different things you did at school to kind of test out, kind of standing on your feet, making your debates, making your arguments. So outside of the mock trials, which obviously we're running as Trailblazers, look out for it. But was there other things you did? So did you do any drama, debating clubs, societies, or anything like that?
I didn't. I was in a dance club, so I had to do sort of things on stage. I didn't do drama or debating, but both of them are excellent chances to do the same sort of thing and learn the same sort of skills. I think actually with hindsight, I should have done some debating because with debating, you get a problem and you only have a very short period to think of answers, and that actually comes up more often than you would want in court. So I think if people do debating, it's a very good example of, and if you like it, a good example of enjoying the bar.
Yeah, but even things like having done dance, that kind of being able to perform in front of people under pressure, that all kind of feeds into what you do now, I suppose, in a way.
Yeah, and I think you don't have to love it and you don't have to be the shining light who isn't bothered by it. You can still get nervous, and the best barristers, the most senior people who are really good before they stand up in court are still nervous. That doesn't die down, and you wouldn't want it to, because you want a little bit of fear to make sure that you do the proper preparation.
Yeah, Yeah, and it shows you care, I suppose. That's sometimes what knows me. Amazing. Thanks so much, Emma. I would love to hear from Anna as well, if that's all right. Just same question, really, about when the Thunderbolt hit you, if it did, about why you want to be
Sure.
there.
I was actually similar. I kind of decided that I wanted to be a lawyer from when I was a small child, and had no real reason because I came from, you know, rural area, 2 miles from the nearest village, in Mayo. Parents did, you know, ordinary jobs, didn't know any lawyers, so it was essentially television. I had a very simplistic idea of what it meant. So I essentially thought that, you know, you get to stand up for people, and that seemed quite nice. And then I suppose I was quite an argumentative child too, which probably helped. And then later in secondary school, I enjoyed subjects like English and history, and I sort of thought the idea of studying law would be enjoyable, and kept at it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's funny you saying about your parents, or you being an argumentative child. One of the most said things to me by my parents was, "This is not a debate, Michael. It's not a debate." I just constantly got screamed at across the kitchen table. I've never learned, but there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, bro, that's really interesting. So we've got a lot of very junior converts, and so Connell, are you any different? Are you the same?
No, I'm the polar opposite. I did not have a dream to be a lawyer at all. And just despite having both my parents from legal backgrounds as well, and it did not rub off on me. So it wasn't really until quite late on in university. And I guess even to step back from that, I initially chose to do law in university, well, admittedly, because I didn't know what else to do. And basically, I wanted a degree that I could use as a springboard to do something like open doors. But what ended up happening is I, through just over the course of university, and as we got into topics in more and more detail, and through having done work experience in some like local law firms, I ended up just liking it more and more, and increasingly to the point where I thought I would actually like to pursue this and see where it goes, and I could see myself making a career out of this. And yeah, that's kind of what happened. And yeah, like as of this month, I'm 10 years qualified, which is absolutely horrifying. But yeah, it's been great, yeah, and I don't regret it, despite not having that dream from a young age.
And so were you kind of almost affected by the opposite of everybody else, in terms of everybody else kind of had from quite a young age this clear idea of what a lawyer was, and that was really attractive? Did you have quite a clear idea of what a lawyer was, and you're like, that doesn't really interest me, and then maybe as you went, you learned that it can be a bit more multifaceted, or was that kind of part of that development?
Well, I guess I had a wee bit of a taste of that just from knowing what my parents did, although at a very outside looking in perspective and not knowing all the granular details. So I guess I knew it wasn't like an episode of Suits, and it wasn't like how TV shows make you think. But yeah, I guess even I remember back in school time going through, especially like an upper sixth, and being almost a bit amazed at people who knew what they wanted to be it lawyer, teacher, doctor, whatever. And so at that stage, I was just like, how can you know when you're 17, 18 years old? But then, yeah, like it worked out. Like I just ended up really liking what I did in university, and the fact that over the course of the 3-4 years, you just really go into stuff in more detail, and you pick up different skills and interests along the way. And I thought, yeah, this is something I wanted to go of, and it's worked out pretty well, I think.
Plus, yeah, I mean, clearly it has. That's brilliant. That's really helpful. And then Lily, so what's your story, I suppose?
So we're a completely split panel, because I'm on the side of Connell. It was honestly my decision to become a lawyer, I think, was just pure panic. So I had history down to study, and I remember going away with my school friends just before the deadline for the CAO, and all of them had put down law, and I was like, well, if everyone's doing law, I also have to do law, because I'm not going to get a job as a historian. So that's why I chose law. And then I guess it was during the course of my degree that it sort of dawned on me what the profession entails, because I hadn't really given it any thought before. And I think similar to Anna, I realized that it was something that I could use to help people and to advocate for people. And it was the kind of problem solving aspect of it as well. It all seemed quite straightforward, which was that really appealed to me. So that's really how I came to the career. Panic.
Yeah. That's good reasons, Annie. That's really interesting though. And I suppose kind of following on from that, did anyone have particularly either useful or not useful first legal work experience. So my first one was very random, and it was just someone was connected to my school, and he had a high street law firm, and he was like, "Oh yeah," my school basically planted me on him for a day, and he didn't know what to do with me, so he just gave me a massive file, which turned out to be like an utterly grimy, slightly traumatizing case, and just put me in a room with no windows on my own, and just said, "Yeah, you can read that." I was 15. But despite that, I was like, this probably isn't all law. I'm sure I'll be able to find something. Did anyone have a particularly insightful or one that they just about survived kind of first, legal experience, Connell?
Yeah, I guess sort of similar to yourself. When I did work experience, I had that same experience where I was put in a room and here's a nice stack of files, go read them. And it kind of made me realize which route I didn't want to go down. And that was more sort of general high street practice, conveyancing, kind of whatever. I just realized that wasn't for me. And kind of then helped, particularly when it came to post-uni and looking at doing training contracts and thinking, okay, what sort of firms do I want to target and go after? It really helped. That and taking advice from people just helped narrow my focus and my mind to an area that I really wanted to go down, and was really beneficial that way.
Yeah, definitely. And does anyone have any other, before we move on to the next question, any other kind of memories from early legal work experience, whether good or bad?
I think it's, if you can do it through your school or whatever, it's definitely worth doing. I mean, I did both with solicitor and with barrister in sixth form, and it highlighted to me that what I thought I wanted to do was right, because when I went to the solicitor's firm, I was put in a similar room with large file and sort of left to it for a couple of days. But I think you can have very good experiences if you're doing sort of the right VAC scheme or the right work experience. So don't let one bad experience rule it all out for you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's probably, something for all the people watching. As a few of us have had very bad first legal work experience. I'm not brilliant legal work experience, but we stuck at it and we found, I'm sure we were all inspired by different ones. I remember being stuck in being passed a bunch of documents and being asked to research something. I said, actually, I think you want me to research this instead. And they just looked at me and I was like, no, I think we should run this instead. And they ended up changing their case. And I was like, this is bonkers. This is the coolest experience I've ever had. I'm the greatest lawyer that's ever lived. And they, which I can now confirm is not true. But at the time I was like, oh, this is exciting. So you will have very legal work experience. I think it's about probably a level of delusionist that actually I think this will work for me, even if I have a bad day or a bad experience. And again, the shout out, another thing later on in the Trailblazer program, the workshop should be brilliant in terms of giving you an insight into the kind of things and the kind of legal problem solving, the different varieties of different issues you have to deal with and how you deal with them. So yeah, one for people to look out on. So the other question I was keen to move on to was basically give me an idea of what your route to becoming a lawyer was, I suppose, from that point when you had that initial interest. And then I think everyone's taken slightly different routes. Anna, what was yours, I suppose?
Sure. So when I finished studying, well, it took me quite a long time to qualify after that. It was just when the recession was hitting in Ireland, so things weren't great in terms of job opportunities. And I think I wrote to pretty much every law firm in Galway and lots of other areas, and got very few responses, and the ones I did were negative. And then the bigger firms were all cancelling their trainee intakes. And so it was looking pretty bad. So I decided I'm just going to go and have some fun for a while. I went to New Zealand and Australia for a bit. When I got back, it was still not great in Ireland. I spent a couple of months looking for legal experience while I was working in a shop, and then thought things were probably a bit better in England in terms of opportunities. So decided to move over and give it a go. And because I had no real experience in law, it was still quite difficult to get that first job and get in the door. But eventually I got a job as an administrative assistant, and it was in this small immigration firm in Birmingham. And just talking about bad experiences, working was a terrible place to work. The pay was really bad. the boss would regularly threaten to throw people out the window if they printed too many documents and things like that. But they did train me up as an immigration caseworker. And then I was able to use that to get into a better firm in London. And then eventually got into Kingsley Nappy based on that and got a training contract there. And then what I studied part-time for a bit to convert my Irish qualification into an English one, and qualified into the dispute resolution team. So it was a very long route, but got there eventually.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it took
Well,
about
you,
11 years after study.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you put your hard yards in, and you avoided the very aggressive eco warrior in your office who would flip you out, obviously,
Yeah.
if they destroy too many rainforest trees. But again, fascinating. And how do you feel? Do you feel that route, how long it took and those different experiences you had along the way to getting that training contract, do you think that put you in good stead for the training contract? Or do you wish, oh, actually, I wish I went straight from studying, was parachuted into training contract and went from there?
No, I mean, I think I learned so much along the way that it's been really helpful. Even, different areas of law and different experiences and just about dealing with people from every sort of background.
Yeah.
I think it's all helpful, and you need to enjoy the journey as well as actually getting there in the end.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I was constantly reminding myself was when I was going through those kind of projections and different kind of working out different pathways and stuff, some doors closing, other ones opening. Was just it's a marathon rather than a sprint, but it very much feels like you're in a sprint when you're at university or your mates are maybe getting those jobs. Connell, what was your route to becoming a lawyer, I suppose?
Yeah, it was, I guess, a little more traditional once I decided that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So did my undergrad at Queen's in Belfast, and in the final year, so end of the first semester, final year, did like the entrance exams for the Institute of Arts and Legal Studies, which is basically the law school postgrad qualification course, and then went out to find a training contract. Because I guess the system in the north, for I guess I'm benefiting on the call, is a bit different to England and in the Republic of Ireland. So you kind of do your law school bit and your training contract bit concurrently. It's not the best way to set things up, but that's how they do it. And I guess you need to have a training contract before you get into the law school bit.
Yeah.
And I, from having taken advice and just using that past work experience that I talked about earlier, I decided that I wanted to go down like the corporate commercial route, and I sort of targeted those sort of firms. And I got a training contract in what is now Pinson Masons, but it was a different firm at the time. Because Scottish firm called McGregor's, and they were taken over. So I was there for 2 years, rotating through all the different departments over that time. And then I qualified into their banking team, which admittedly was not my choice. It was kind of at that stage I was kind of told this is where the job is, and you don't really have much leverage when you're newly qualified. But kind of really quickly realized that that just wasn't for me. I had no interest in that area, and I left after 6 months. But I went to work in-house there at a big tech company in Dublin, which I guess at the time was a bit unusual in that freshly qualified solicitors, I guess, generally or traditionally didn't go in-house that early in the career. So it was a bit of an unusual route, but I knew kind of something I wanted to be in that, I had an interest in like tech outside of work anyway. So I wanted to, having found something that went down that route kind of really appealed to me. And sort of since then I've been in different in-house tech roles, and then yeah, for the last like 20-ish months have been at TikTok and kind of found a bit of a niche doing combining like tech with sort of digital advertising as well. So it was kind of real by accident rather than design, kind of where I've ended up. But it's I kind of feel like it's kind of where I was meant to find or end up eventually.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. Just to explain as well to some people who might not be aware. So basically, for solicitors, you can have two broadly outcomes. You work in a law firm day to day, where your clients are outside companies or individuals, or you work what's called in-house. So Conor, what would you say the kind of difference? How would you explain the difference there?
Yeah, they're kind of very different. So whereas when you're a law firm, you could have, say 10, 20 different clients, whatever, who may have multiple different matters going on at any one time. So you have loads of different files in your desk. But when you're working in-house, you have one client and it is that company. So for me, TikTok is my client, and my job is basically to help them maximize their revenue, i.e. the money they make, versus minimizing the risk that they may get sued or they may not make money. So you're kind of solely focused on that one business, that client, and you're really driven by whatever their business strategy is and whatever the industry is, and trying to adapt and problem solve around that. Whereas I guess in that sense, you're being a lot more, I guess, proactive, whereas in law firms you can tend to be a kind of reactive. Like, for example, if someone tries to sue you, or you go to court, whatever. So there's kind of quite key differences that way, and also just the way the way you kind of interact with people, like business people versus other lawyers. Kind of quite different types of communication styles and information. Like, they don't really care what the law is; they just want to know, can they do something, and if not, what can they do instead. So it's kind of quite different disciplines in that sense, and very different types of audiences you have to pitch to and work with.
Yeah, definitely. And so that's for our audiences, it's kind of a very, and just kind of another diversity amongst what you can kind of do and what kind of suits you as a personality, and you kind of learn these things as you go. I think it's not something you need to know way in advance, but it's something you pick up. And Lily, so what would you say your route to become a lawyer was?
Yeah, so it took me a bit of time to figure out what type of law I wanted to go into. So when I was in university, I did like a big mix of modules, which was really helpful to try and determine what it is that I was actually interested in. And then, actually, speaking of work experience, we had to fight the university to get some work experience as part of our degree, as a sort of module. We thought it was really important to have that before you are kind of thrown out into the world, so you actually know what being a lawyer entails. So I did some work at the Irish Refugee Council in Dublin, which was brilliant. So then I kind of had in my head, okay, maybe I want to do refugee asylum law or maybe immigration law. I moved to London straight after university, and I went into an immigration law firm as a paralegal to sort of test it out. Realized quite quickly this is not what I want to do. I definitely wanted to be a disputes lawyer. So I really liked kind of arguing and contentious work. So I came to Mishcon then as a paralegal after about 9 months, and was applying for the training contract at the same time. And the day I got the training contract with Mishcon, I handed in my notice. I went traveling for about 18 months, which was great, and would highly recommend have a break as well if you can. There's no rush. I came back, I did my LPC, which is the legal practitioner's course. So I did it in 6-7 months or something. You can do it in an academic year as well. So that's sort of teaching you all the practical skills of how to be a lawyer. Came into Mishcon and did 2 years training. So you do 4 6-month seats in different areas. So again, that you have some more time to think about what exactly it is that you want to do. And at the end of that, I qualified into the private client department into commercial litigation.
Cool, amazing. So, and yeah, it's a really, really interesting route as well. And that's good advice. If you have the opportunity to travel and you've got the space to, and you think you can get away with it, it's always worth trying to build those in if you can manage it. But the kind of take that break before the intensity of training contracts. So on that as well, so for everybody watching, so there's basically a load of different ways you can become a solicitor. But one of the most common ways is by getting a training contract. So once you've got a training contract, you've then got 2 years of training. And just like Lily was saying, that's split up into what's called different seats. So you basically have different experiences, 6 months normally, within different areas of law that make up your 2 years. And then after that, you qualify into different areas. And sometimes you want to qualify at that firm, or you want to qualify at a different one. And people kind of make different choices at the time. Or sometimes, like Conal was saying, just because of circumstances, you don't have as much choice you originally would have wanted. And so you go there, you pick up what you can, and then you maybe look to switch it up. And then moving over to Emma, so very different route, because became a barrister instead of us born solicitors who were scared of the wigs and the gowns. So talk to me about your pathway, your route.
So as I said, I knew I pretty much wanted to be a barrister. So the final year of university is probably when I properly started looking into qualification routes. I ended up going to the English bar. So the bar actually in Dublin, Belfast and London is all slightly different routes. So if you want to be a barrister in Dublin, you have to do the King's Inn exams and then get pupillage. If you want to do it in Belfast, you have to do the Institute exams. It's actually the same exams if you want to go to the bar or be a solicitor. And if you want to be a barrister in England, you have to do what's called the bar course. And I decided, I'd spent my third year abroad in the States. I did this international commercial litigation course, and I decided that was for me. That's what I wanted to do. And I wanted to go to the bar. And I thought that the perk of the English bar was that you can actually specialise right from the outset. So the bar in Dublin and in Belfast is slightly different. You tend to take what comes in and you don't necessarily specialise right at the outset. Whereas in England, it's set up in chambers, which are like a law firm, but not. Everyone within the chambers is self-employed. And so you can actually end up in cases against other members of chambers. But the benefit of the chamber system is that you can specialise right from the outset. So each set of chambers tends to have a specialisation area. And my set of chambers is commercial chancery, so company disputes, general contract disputes, civil fraud. And the other benefit is that when you're training, you get paid. Because the difficulty at the bar in Belfast and Dublin is that you are on your own, and until you get work of your own right, all my friends who've done it have had part-time or multiple part-time jobs at the same time, because it's very difficult to fund your way through it. Whereas the sets in London and the English bar generally they consider themselves to compete with the law firms in London, especially the commercial law firms. And so they have to make sure that you're paid sufficiently so that you don't go elsewhere. So you're paid for your pupillage year. It's actually just 1 year of training, so not 2 years.
Right.
So you do your 1 year bar skill, 1 year training, and then at the end of that, they decide whether they're going to keep you as a member. If they didn't, you could go and do another 6 months in a different set, sort of on probation, to see whether they take you. And then, so I decided I wanted to go to the English bar, made my application, did. Actually, I decided I wanted to do a master's first, so finished college, did a year out as well, which I would highly recommend because it's easier before you start working to not work. Worked abroad and then came back, did a master's in England. And part of the reason for doing that is because I knew I wanted to go to the bar in London. And for commercial practices in London, a lot of people do have masters. So I thought I would be at a slight disadvantage if I hadn't done it. I know now that you can still get pupillage without it, but at the time I just wasn't really too sure. So I did the master's, I applied for bar school that year, I applied for pupillage that year because you make the application 18 months in advance. And so I had pupillage lined up by the time I did my bar course, studied, did my bar exams, my advocacy exams, and then I started pupillage and did my training. So we do have similar idea of seats, you sit with different people. So I sat with 4 different supervisors, roughly 3 months each. You get to see different practice areas, different styles of advocacy, different work. And then you just do work for other members of chambers. So in chambers, we've got junior barristers, and then we've got silks, which is now King's Counsel, then Queen's Counsel, or in Ireland, it'd be senior counsel. So you do some work for them as well whenever you're training, because at the end of the day, if you're kept on, you'll end up being a junior for them in future cases. So everyone has to test your ability. And then I got taken on, and here I am.
Yeah, amazing. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely, as hopefully everyone's getting this vibe for it's definitely, all the routes are very, very different, and everyone takes quite a different route to them. So for me, I remember coming back from university and coming back from a kind of scholarship trip to America to work, and I came back and I was working in a clothes store, and trying to send out different applications to paralegal roles, and finding out that I'd got the paralegal role in it because when I was out the back of the clothes store doing part of my job, which was breaking boxes by the bins. And I got this phone call and I was like, right, okay, I could stop breaking boxes. This is pretty news. But then as a paralegal, I did carry a lot of boxes, but still, it was just, there was definitely progress in terms of my interaction with boxes. But so loads of really varied ways. So I think before we tap into kind of more of a look back in terms of things you wish you knew and main pieces of advice, I'd be really interested to know what people's sense of their proudest moment in their legal career, and whether that's something really specific to do with a particular case, particular outcome, or something you've done adjacent to your legal career. I'd be really, really interested to know. Anna, do you have one for us to kick us off?
I don't have a specific moment exactly that I can think of, but I think generally just seeing the positive difference that you can make to somebody's life is something that's made me feel proud at times. I could give an example of a case.
Please.
There's one where I was contacted by a young man when he was about 18, and he asked if we could help him look into whether he should have received anything from his mother's estate. So she had died when he was about 8, and his father didn't have much interest in looking after him after that. So he was essentially brought up by a foster carer, but he had been told by a relative that they thought that his mother had left something for him, but he hadn't received anything. So he didn't have any money to pay for legal fees, so we agreed we'd look into it a bit for him and see what we could find out, and maybe if there was a claim that was going to be successful, we could be paid later. It turned out after some investigating that the parents had never been married, so which meant that he should have been the sole beneficiary of his mother's estate. And eventually we were able to recover the estate assets for him, which included a property in central London that was worth over £1 million. And he ended up moving in there with the foster carer and had quite a nice life to start off with. Obviously it didn't change the fact that he had a difficult childhood, but it meant that he was secure for his future. And just seeing the difference that you can make to somebody by helping them with a case like that, I just think it's something that you can feel proud about, and it's not often you get to see that a big difference like that. But litigation in particular, especially I think estates and court protection work, it's something you come across now and again, and it's quite a nice thing to do.
Wow, what an amazing. So that makes it really hard for everyone else in the panel. What an amazing story. That's an outrageous outcome. And just for context for everybody else as well, Anna spends a huge amount of time doing pro bono work alongside her actual billable work. So pro bono is basically for the public good. So it's basically, it would be a case like that. For instance, obviously that wasn't specifically maybe pro bono, but there's loads of programs you can go and you can work in law centres, basically, where people come and they need assistance and they can't afford assistance. And that's something that, even though all of us here are on the commercial side of law, there's a huge amount of people who, while on the commercial side of law, still scratch that itch that kind of Lily referred to earlier on about doing that human rights stuff or justice stuff by taking on these other little cases. And sometimes that's one of the ways that we get a real sense of pride. Sometimes that's in addition to, really kicking ass against the other side in a really competitive case. And it's just that holistic way in which you can really feel proud of what you do as part of our job. Really, that's amazing. Anna, thank you very much. Lily, are you keen to talk about your proud moment too? That's all right.
I think I'm going to choose a pro bono case after all that. I think I have to. I think as well with the pro bono cases, you do get quite close to the clients because in particular, they're so grateful for your assistance because they're not paying for it. And they're also just really grateful for somebody to listen to them and to help them, because often they've gone through and they've tried to get legal advice, maybe from a free legal advice centre. They've tried writing to their local MP or TG in Ireland, and they've usually got nowhere. So by the time they come to you, they're kind of on their last legs. And they're great. We get some really good clients in. So I think the one that I was thinking of was, we had a woman who was being harassed in her flat. And it was awful. It was really bad. There was a man living above her. He used to do things like he flooded her flat on multiple occasions by just leaving the taps on all night, water coming through the ceiling. He used to play music and really horrible things with the speakers, like right up on the floor. So they would beam down into her flat all hours of the day and night, 24 hours a day. She got death threats. She got rape threats. It was horrible. It was really, really awful. And nobody was doing anything about it. She'd been to the police. She'd been to the housing association, and they just kept fobbing her off. So by the time we got on board, she was pretty desperate. And it took us a while to sort of get any attention from the authorities, to get any help from her. But we succeeded. We were great. So we went through the police, wrote them some pretty snarky letters, and banged on a few doors. And they came down, and the housing association as well took notice. It's amazing what a solicitor's letter will do, even though we were saying the exact same thing as what she'd been saying for months. So we got him moved out, and the police are investigating, and yeah, she was really grateful, and she can live a normal, happy life now, as if before she was kind of confined to her flat and living in fear. So yeah, I think that was my proudest moment.
Yeah, that's an amazing outcome. I think definitely one of the things about you can equally feel very invested, obviously, in the main bulk of your work, your day-to-day work. You can be very passionate about great outcomes. You can be very passionate about the general commercial deal, or the goals of your client. But there's definitely the most emotionally invested I felt, or I'm slightly exhausted. I think there's two sides of that coin. Was on those kind of cases, which can be quite tough. But if you get the right outcome, they're brilliant, and if you don't, then it will haunt you. As I've said, yeah, had on one pro bono case. But the Emma, do you have any particular proudest moment? Doesn't need to be pro bono. It can just be generally being a badass. Which
I would
is also
echo
totally
do pro
allowed.
bono. No, pro bono is actually, I mean, quite often in commercial cases, you end up at the bar anyway, you end up as a junior barrister, so you don't necessarily get to be the advocate speaking. And the perk of pro bono is that right from the outset, it's always just you, and so you get to go into court and you get to represent people, and so it's a good way to do advocacy, but also to help people who genuinely are so appreciative of everything you do. And you take for granted how much knowledge you acquire as a lawyer, just procedural knowledge and how the law works and what the law is, that if you aren't coming across it every day, very much appreciate it. But I think I'll go off back to just a regular client, because I had one client who was in a dispute with his brother, and it was one of those cases that I advised on whether there even was any way a claim could be brought. And then did the pleadings, did all the hearings, we did the trial. And so, I mean, it took probably 3 years from initial advice through to the end of the trial, and that was quite a small case to take quite so long. But the appreciation and the client ended up winning. He succeeded on his claim. It was actually an estoppel claim, which you think you will never run. Estoppel is this odd, equitable relief that, in theory, nobody actually deals with. But we did a trial for a couple of days in central London County Court, and he won. And it's being able to have been through it right from the beginning, and then achieving the goal for the client at the end of the day. It's really satisfying.
Yeah, no, definitely, that's an amazing one, and I think you cannot underestimate, particularly as everyone will have picked up, one of the things that kind of unites us all in terms of when we were younger, something we all really enjoyed was problem solving. Like, solving a problem or finding a unique solution to that problem is golden. Like, you get such a buzz from it. Like, I remember doing what's called civil fraud work. So basically, someone has treated another person very badly with a huge amount of deceit and dishonesty and all that stuff. And you just go through hundreds of pages of documents, and finding that one document within it which actually just transforms your case and just is such a win. It's really exciting. So yeah, definitely get that. And in terms of Connell, what would be one of your proudest moments, I suppose?
Yeah, well, I'm glad I'm not following Anna and Lily. Mine is more sort of regular, sort of commercial work.
Yeah.
And I know, I mean, I guess there's an obvious answer to this, which is qualify in the first place, which is a bit scary, because then oh God, this is it now. But I'm not going to go take that easy way out. And it is hard to pick one thing, because you know, after being qualified now for 10 years, and looking back, I guess I'm quite proud of kind of what I have achieved and how much I've grown from when I first qualified to where I am now in TikTok. But if I did have to pick one moment, one that stands out in particular was when I joined a company called Kainos in Belfast. And while they were in the middle of doing an IPO, which is an initial public offering where they went from being a private company to being listed on the London Stock Exchange. And I guess it was a very unique situation to be parachuted into, especially for an Indigenous Northern Irish company. I think that now there are only, I think, 4 public companies that are from Northern Ireland. I think at the time there's only 1 or 2, so it was really not a very well trodden path. And also, guess for a company like Kainos, who are like basically a software company, and they started off as like a research project from Queen's University and spun out to be in the sort of commercial arm. And I guess having joined that, I guess maybe just a little over halfway through the IPO process, so some of the groundwork had been done, but it was quite a delicate and crucial stage where I got to look backward as to everything that happened up to that point, but then also be actively involved in what needed to be done to finish the process and successfully list. And it's just a mammoth undertaking, and something that I obviously knew what an IPO was, but I had no idea what was involved in actually the mechanics of making it happen. And I was still, you know, fairly junior at the time, and I was only maybe 2-3 years qualified. And so to be involved in such a big and really secretive project, only a small handful of people in the company knew what was happening, and you know, obviously they couldn't say in interviews that, oh, we've got this going on. It just was quite exciting, and kind of felt a bit kind of thrilling as well. And so it was great to be able to see that through, and see how much of us, even now looking back and seeing how much of a success that it has brought to the company and how it's grown and grown and grown, and knowing that I was involved in that and I played a part, and even some of the things I were working on at the time are there and are the kind of parts of what made it a successful transition. So yeah, it was quite a, I guess, proud thing to look back on.
Yeah, I mean, that's an amazing story. My mum actually used to work for Kainos around this time, so it essentially, for people who aren't aware, is one of the like biggest commercial. Kainos itself, and it's floating, it's going on to the stock exchange, is one of the biggest commercial successes to come out of Belfast. It's essentially the making of the Titanic, but then it didn't sink afterwards. Like it is genuinely amazing. So that's cool to have your fingertips all over that. And I think the point about qualification as well, about that being a really proud moment, as everyone's picked up, it's not easy necessarily becoming a lawyer, qualifying either as a solicitor or a barrister. And we all kind of probably had different speed bumps. I had a huge amount. I certainly had to dust myself off, having made mistakes and not done as well as I wanted to in a particular thing, or missed out on a particular opportunity so many times, that when you got to that moment of qualification or getting your training contract or whatever, there's little kind of staging posts along the way where it's really important to actually bank how proud you can feel at those moments, because they're big moments. It's a hard thing to do. But hopefully things like this program, Trailblazers, is going to help you along that pathway and find that pathway, and to keep on constantly sharpening the program. So I just want to flag, we haven't had any Q&A questions as of yet. If you have any, please chuck them in, because we would love to answer, because we probably have about 10 minutes left. So do it now or forever hold your peace. I was at a wedding the weekend, still in my head. So please put it down. But otherwise, we kind of have a good idea of things people are interested in. So we've got a few more questions we're going to go through instead. But please, if you have any specific questions, don't let the talk end in 10 minutes without having asked them, because we'd love to hear them. So just pop them into the Q&A box. But in the meantime, for everyone coming through, I think something I would love to hear is, what is kind of catch-all, but what is your main piece of advice that you would give to someone at the stage of our attendees here today? So people who are 16, 17, 18, and really pretty really excited at the idea of maybe being a lawyer, and our university volunteer students who are law students, passionate about it, clearly proactive enough to help out with our program, just class. What advice would you give to someone at that kind of very early stage that you wish you knew at the time, or maybe you'd been provided at the time, which has been so helpful. Lily, do you have anything off the top of your head?
I think the piece of advice I would give, which I wish more people had told me, was don't be put off by rejection. So I remember like when my first year in London, I was applying for training contracts and I was just sort of firing them out, and I wasn't tailoring them specifically to the firms that I was applying to. I was just kind of thinking I have to get one somewhere and sending them out, and got lots and lots of rejections as a result. And was really, really disheartened and sort of, is this the career for me? And is there any reason why they rejected me? Is it because I'm crap? And I think it's to just keep persevering. And if you think that this is for you, then keep going and keep putting in applications, and to put in tailored applications and think properly about where you want to go, what you want to do plenty of research, read lots of books, read the news, listen to podcasts. It's all really, really helpful. And like in terms of rejection, I know friends who got accepted, they put out maybe 20 applications and got only accepted by one firm, and that was the best firm, and they were rejected by all these sort of mediocre firms. So it doesn't make any sense, I think, is the output of it. So just keep going if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's great advice. And you could see, hopefully everyone could see how vigorously everyone else was nodding to that, because we all massively know that. And I think one of the things that really sticks in my mind was, to be fair, it was during a run, during a half marathon, and at the halfway point, there was one person who just held one sign, just stand on their own, holding one sign. And it just said, remember why you started. And I think, like, it is genuinely a journey, and I think you need to kind of bank in, like, this is why I think I'm good at this. This is why I'm passionate about it. This is why I'm interested in it. So you can kind of withstand those random rejections. And I think there is definitely something to be said. We've all, I think, probably been rejected by firms or places or chambers which aren't actually as good as the place, or companies which aren't as good as the places we are now. And I still have burned into my retinas an email I received from quite a smallish Belfast firm, which said they wouldn't look at my application because I just wasn't smart enough. Which I love, and I will get framed someday. But yeah. So, Conal, what would your big piece of advice be?
It's really hard to think of one thing. I would say, don't expect it to be like TV, but more seriously, be as open as possible, and that's to different firms, companies, or areas of law, and don't rule anything in or out, because you may have one idea in your head now, then maybe experiencing, you think, oh God, this is not what I thought, or this is crap, and then you don't want to rule out anything too early. And I guess in that sense, to seize any opportunities you can, be it from a sort of a few days work experience to a VAC scheme, or anything like that, or just even talking to someone to get advice and tips, and they're all really useful. And kind of the more info you have, and the more informed you are, then the better kind of decisions you make, and then better of an idea you have of what you might want to do. And I guess there's a couple of other things that bring to mind, is without wanting to sound too buzzwordy, but also just like when you're just starting out, it's the perfect time to experiment, to try new things and push yourself out of your comfort zone, and don't, again, it goes back to don't rule anything out, but this is the time to experience things. Don't be afraid of rejection, like Lily said, or don't be afraid of making mistakes, which everyone makes. I make them even still today. So it's the time to experiment and really find your feet, and you don't know what you can achieve unless you kind of put yourself out there and experience it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, so I think, like Seamus Heaney says, walk on air despite your better judgment. It's kind of just, don't be scared of it not working out to stick your head above the parapet, because you just gain so much from that, and going for opportunities, like you're saying, even if definitely never ever don't apply for something because you're like, oh, they'd never accept me, because you have no idea. Like, you're not the person in charge of that recruitment. So I think grabbing at your opportunities that you see in front of you is amazing advice. Emma, do you have a particular piece of advice?
I think it's linked to that, which is use the skills that you have or you've acquired. So some people, I think, when they're applying for legal jobs, think that they have to have loads of legal work experience, and that's the only way you're going to get in. Totally. But if you spend every Saturday working in the supermarket, or you're in a team and you play team sports, whatever it is that you do, has transferable skills that will be really useful as a lawyer. And don't think that because you haven't spent the summer working in a law firm means that you can't apply for it. Just use what skills you do have and the experiences you have in those applications, and build upon it. If you have the chance to do things that are related to law, do them. Take the chance. Just don't turn anything down. I mean, there comes a point where if you have too many extracurriculars, you probably will stop studying. At the end of the day, you have to qualify. You have to get a degree. Well, you don't actually. You don't. You can go through different routes.
Yeah,
Sort of more well-trodden route is to get a degree, to become a lawyer. And at the bar, you do still need it. They don't have another route, but go and do other things and then use those skills. You don't have to just do law, work experience. Anything's useful.
Yeah, definitely. And I know a mate who worked in a supermarket from when he was like an early teen, and he wasn't putting it on his law applications. And I couldn't believe it. And I was like, you need to put this on. This is so relevant, because there's so many, it's just about distilling all your experiences down into skills. And I think like so I used to be at the same firm as Lily, and in my final interview to get there, one of the things I was talking to them about was being a kitchen cleaner when I was 18, because they were fascinated. Because they hadn't came across many kitchen cleaners, particularly ones who'd used toothbrushes. And that's a story for another day. I was forced to anyway. It's a problem. So last big piece of advice, and I think that's us coming up now. I don't think we're going to get any further questions in, but but if you want to have your last chance, throw them in now. But Anna, what would be your big piece of advice?
I think similar to the others, it's essentially don't give up. There are a couple of times when I thought about it, when I didn't get responses to applications when I finished studying, and when I moved over to England first, I was almost out of money and was thinking, okay, I'm going to have to go back to waitressing and stop applying for this legal stuff. And I think all you need is one opportunity. Get your foot in the door somewhere, and you can build on that. So persevere, you'll get there, and it'll be worth it in the end.
Yeah, amazing advice and amazing thing to finish on. So that's us for today. Sorry. I think I've just been informed that I haven't been reading the Q&A box correctly, which is my bad. So we'll quickly run through a few of these. So one person, Connell, asks, how did you find training in Vincent Masons?
It was interesting. And what they try to do, especially the Belfast office, they try to align to the funky system they have in Northern Ireland, where you do your IPLS, like your law school bit concurrently with the practical bit in the law firm. So they really did, instead of 6-month rotations, they did 6 weekly ones, which is really, really quick. So good things and bad things. I mean, good in that you got to actually go around different departments more than once, but then you never really got to see a transaction through from start to finish, because piece of litigation or no merger acquisition is done in 6 weeks. Now that was 10+ years ago. I'm not sure it'll be like that now, but that's what it was like then. But it was getting really good insight, and especially in a big international firm based with an office in Belfast, and having access to all their resource and other lawyers and everything, it was quite a really good eye-opening experience. And there was a really good, strong trainee network with all the other trainees across the whole UK. So it was like 120 of us all. So I made some quite good friends from that. So it was quite having that support network as well, which was quite good.
Well, thanks. Hopefully that answers the question pretty comprehensively. Another question is, what is your favorite part about working in your field? Emma, do you have an answer to that?
I don't think 2 days are the same, and I like that. You don't tend to get bored.
Yeah, that's a very good answer. Connell, do you have anything in particular about, because obviously your field is very different from the rest of us?
Kind of similar actually, and especially being in a company like TikTok, where it's moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour every day, and trying to put out fires internally and externally, and trying to launch new products, and deal with pushy clients and negotiating different advertising contracts. it really is, everything's different. And I guess, yeah, being for a company so young, so we've been around for like 5 years, but it's having such a massive kind of global impact. So it's just a really cool time and place to be, and especially in the area I'm in doing advertising. So it really keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's amazing. TikTok's only been around for 5 years. That means I've only been ignorant of it properly for 5 years, which makes me feel less old. So that's good. There's another really interesting question is around. So there's two more I want to touch on, and then I'll release it one. But so one question's kind of got two parts to it. But what's the most rewarding branches of law to go into, and which is the most competitive right now? I think probably rewarding branches of law is really can mean a load of different things. So you can be financially, it's really rewarding, the salaries are really good, or it can be it really aligns with your passions and the things you always want to do and always meant the most to you. And in terms of most competitive, I'd say probably basically anywhere in the elite side of the law is competitive. So if you're going for the most competitive commercial law firm, it's going to be really tough. But if you're going kind of a little bit further down the spectrum, then it'll be less competitive. So it's kind of whereabouts, how close to the elite of the legal industry you want to be in terms of breaking up. Does anyone have any other thoughts on that in terms of most rewarding branches of law to go down and most competitive right now? Anna, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think what you said is right. It really depends on what you want. Whether you enjoy, working with people and feeling like you're helping them, or sometimes people really enjoy the technical legal issues, the actual letter of the law and working things out. So there's so many different areas. It depends on the person. So it's hard to say. For me, it's if you feel like you're making a difference, I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. So I think it's about working out what matters, what you find most rewarding, and then trying to work out where that aligns. So it's hard to for anyone else almost to kind of tell you which way to go about that. And then the last question is a really, really interesting one, and it's from an international student who's talking about what it's like to go into another country and be a lawyer there and manage to accommodate yourself in that new life. And I think it was originally triggered from Emma flagging that she worked in New Zealand for a bit, but I think it probably, to an extent, probably applies to all of us as in our community as London Irish lawyers. In terms of, while the cultural distinctions probably aren't as huge as it would be, there is something about being distinctive, being away from home, maybe of having qualified in a different place. Connell, what do you have any take on that? Because obviously you've moved to London in the last 5 years. You originally qualified in Belfast.
Yeah, I qualified in Belfast and worked in Dublin for a bit, and now over here. And I guess from a personal perspective, yeah, like you said, the cultural differences aren't really that big, and obviously in the same time zone and everything like that make sense. And I can fly home in an hour if I wanted to. So from that point of view, it's I guess it wasn't that big of a change. Obviously, going from somewhere like, well, anywhere in Ireland, to be honest, to London is a huge shock to the system, because it is just a big, fast-paced, kind of scary city that that people will push you out of the way on the way out of their way to the tube every day. But I guess it's just it's kind of outweighed by the kind of the excitement of the opportunity and the fast pace of life here, and it's just yet very exciting. And there is such a, I guess, support network through organizations like LILA, but but even through companies and firms that you're in. They kind of, it's I guess symptom of London means it's an international city. There are always going to be people who move here from other places, so there's always going to be support networks either in your job or in your local community, or even, I don't know, like online, there'll be different groups you can find. So there's always something there to support. So, and I certainly wouldn't let any fears about moving abroad, which are quite natural, put anyone off, because it's, I guess, you only regret the chances or opportunities you don't take. So it's better to try something for like a year, thinking, you know, it's not for me, but at least I tried it, rather than saying, oh God, wish I had have done that while I had the chance.
Yeah, I mean, that's an amazing answer. Yeah, hopefully that's really helpful. I think the point about there, particularly in London, because it's so, just like you're saying, there is that community. And sometimes when you move away from home, you need to work a bit more proactively to build that community. But there are organizations like us and equivalents all across London, and it's about seeking them out and getting stuck right into them. And Emma, just also interested in your answer to that question, given you worked in Bermuda for a while, and have worked in different places around the world. Do you have any kind of advice on that?
I think it's like finding your community. It's finding what it is that you enjoy, and it's going to be slightly different everywhere. So, you know, in Bermuda, I met somebody on the first day who had just moved over, and I spent the next 3 weekends out in her and her friends' boats because she knew somebody else, and that's what you did, and everybody went out in the boat together. And I think when you move somewhere, it's being willing to try to chat to people because you don't know anyone else, and that's the only way you get to meet them. And people are very friendly, and it's daunting at the outset, but that's how you get a gang and that's how you get your community. But I have to say, my experience everywhere is actually very similar. People, no matter where you are in the world, are very similar, and I wouldn't be too worried. I mean, the difference between New Zealand and London is that New Zealand is a slightly further flight, so I can't just pop home for weddings or weekends.
But yeah, no, but hopefully that's really helpful between Emma and Connell. Just about finding your community and taking opportunities and not being scared of the change, really. But that's us done. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. And thank you so much to our amazing panel who've been so brilliant, so generous with their time, and so fantastic in answering the questions. So thank you very much. This is the first Trailblazer event of many, so hopefully we'll see many of you in the months to come. And yeah, and all the best. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop the recording now. And yeah, end the meeting. Cheers. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.